everybody at home. I told you you'd see me again. My name is Megan Moritz, and thank you for joining us today. With me, I have Rob Clyde, past chair of the ISACA board, among other things. What are your other titles?
Oh gosh, too many to list. If you want to see them, come to the keynote tomorrow morning and they'll have them all up. But I am on the ISACA board of directors, as you mentioned. I also serve on the White Cloud Security Board as the executive chair.
Okay.
And I'm also on the Crypto Quantique board. And I advise other companies like Curtail, Axiomatics, Shard Secure, and a couple of others.
That's a lot of words.
It's a lot of words. It's a lot of companies. I think I'm at the point where I would get bored if I was only working for one company. So This way I can work with a lot of different companies.
Okay, fair.
ISACA being one of them.
I only work for ISACA these days. So so you mentioned you've got the Campfire Session tomorrow with Tim from SolarWinds. What are you looking forward to? What can people expect to see during this?
Oh my gosh, this is so exciting that we have Tim Brown, the CISO of SolarWinds, who was actually at the epicenter of the SolarWinds attack and had to deal with the challenges, the fallout, the media, the customers, everything. And I think people are really going to enjoy listening to Tim, and most importantly, having a chance to ask questions for Tim, because I think there's a way they can even start asking questions now.
Yeah, so at home, if you go into the session for tomorrow, the fireside chat, there is a place to enter your questions. And we encourage you to put those in early, even today, because they will be looked at ahead of time, and then your questions can get upvoted if you have a really good one. Have you met Tim before?
Tim and I used to work together.
Really?
Yes.
At one of these big companies that you've
So
listed
we were
off?
together at Accent Technologies, which was bought by Symantec, and then we were together at Symantec when I was CTO at Symantec. So we know each other very well. We've kept in touch over the years since then. Tim has had a fabulous career. He was a senior fellow at Dell. And for those of you who don't know what fellows are, it takes a lot to become a fellow.
Okay.
So becoming a fellow at a large company is the highest level of technical recognition that somebody can have.
And once you're a fellow, are you always a fellow?
You're like a made man.
That's it. He doesn't need to be the CISO of SolarWinds. He's just the made man.
Once you're a fellow, it means something throughout the rest of your career.
Well, it'll be good to have the dialogue then with each other.
Yes.
So that I think will be fun. Hence the campfire chat instead of, the
we know each other well. That'll also give us, I think, an opportunity to have really a chat that should be very comfortable. We'll certainly talk about what happened at SolarWinds.
Right.
And you'll hear it from Tim, as opposed to third-hand reports or second-hand reports that most people have heard. And then Tim has a way of taking rather complex and even fairly contentious issues and making them understandable for all of us. That's a skill he's had ever since I've worked with him. And so I highly recommend that if you ask questions to Tim, like a simple one I know I'm going to ask is like, how did you survive as CISO with that kind of a break-in occurring?
That would be very challenging.
You can hear why he was able to survive, and it might help you understand that just because you have an incident doesn't mean your career is over. In fact, if you embrace certain things, it can be a career maker.
When I told friends of mine that he was actually going to be speaking, they said, oh my God, this is so fascinating, because we want to learn from what went wrong, right? You don't want to keep all of that in and just be like, well, best of luck to you when it happens, because, it's likely
to. And I think you're also going to learn about the sophistication of the attack. I think most of us will come out of the session saying, but for the grace of God, there go I. And you'll learn from him of how to deal with some of the most difficult types of attacks that could occur.
So this is just a fun, ridiculous fact about me. I don't pay a whole lot of attention to the news. It's kind of depressing, and I live in a very happy little bubble. But the SolarWinds thing made its way through my news feed. And no joke, I told Rob this earlier, I thought that a wind farm had been hacked. That's how clueless I was about what SolarWinds. Now I know what it is, of course.
Well, SolarWinds actually makes system software that are widely used throughout the world.
Okay.
And so when you realize that enterprises all around the world and governments around the world were relying on these pieces of system software that, oh, by the way, are highly privileged by nature,
Yeah.
you can understand why it became such a big news item, because it could lead directly to people breaking into systems. Also means that many of our companies, it just helps us understand how important the concept of trust is.
True.
Because it isn't just SolarWinds, it's all of our enterprises that rely upon our customers and even the public at large trusting us.
Yeah.
And that's a challenge in today's world.
And I think that when you have those, you're working with other companies and you trust them, that they're going to trust the companies they're working with, and they're going to trust the companies. That's a lot of trust.
There's a whole supply chain. How do you actually get that kind of trust into the supply chain?
Yeah.
And, it's part of the reason why ISACA has been coming up with this idea of digital trust.
Indeed.
Because it's beyond just technology. Part of it is just a feeling.
Yeah.
And you have to deal with those feelings. They're real. If people don't feel like they trust them, even though maybe there's a lot of technical reasons they should, you still have a problem.
Yeah.
And that has to be one of the attributes that goes into it.
We talked to a guy earlier today, and he said, I don't know if I trust the internet. Like, that's where his trust level is, with this digital trust thing. And I'm like, yeah. And think about what we put out there for people to consume. It's kind of crazy.
There was a recent survey that showed that half the people in the United States no longer trust the technology that they use every single day.
I was going to say, but they don't put the phone away, right? And
we're using the technology, but we don't necessarily trust it.
Huh.
And that's down almost 20 points from just a couple of years ago. So something is happening in today's world that's causing us to lose that trust. I think part of it are cybersecurity problems that are big news.
Yeah.
I think there are privacy concerns. We don't know what they do with our data, and we're getting more knowledgeable about how much of our data is getting out there. We heard some things in this morning's keynote about reasons to be concerned even more in the future about what companies might know about us. And we have to be able to trust that they actually are going to do the right thing with that data, and we're not sure. Political divides. Are we really sure if they're being biased one way or the other? It doesn't matter what side you're on. You're still concerned.
Yep.
Because they really haven't earned that trust, for example, of being arbitrators of disinformation. And so you have this world we live in where just a lot of underlying simmering concerns. And I don't think we're at a point where we can say trust is increasing in the technology world or even in the industry. It's rapidly declining. We've got to change that tide. And I think that's one of the primary reasons ISACA felt now is the right time to do digital trust.
Okay, so speaking of digital trust, you are on a panel today at 2:55 Central Time.
Yes.
And who's on the panel with you? What are you going to be talking about? Is it strictly ISACA's role in digital trust or just digital trust in general?
Well, I think ISACA's idea is, as we always do things, we think big.
Yes, we do.
So let's have a digital trust framework that anybody in the world can use. So it is for everybody, but this will be about ISACA's view of what digital trust is.
Okay.
And so on the panel, we'll have a couple of us, Brennan and I, who are on the board of directors, Brennan Bayback, who's an SVP at Oracle.
Mm-hmm.
You'll have me on the board. We'll also have Shannon Donahue, who has helped lead a lot of this effort for ISACA around digital trust.
Yeah.
And we'll have Chris Dimitriades.
Oh, virtually.
Who will be joining us, who is an SVP at ISACA. I think he's the head of global strategy, if I remember right.
Yes, he is the Chief Global Strategy Officer.
And Chris is a recent addition to the ISACA staff. We're thrilled to have him.
Yeah.
He lives over in Europe and actually represents part of ISACA's effort to expand our footprint relative to staff in other locations in the world. And Chris is really going to be heading up that effort of how we can do more globally outside of the United States. So we're thrilled to have him on board. He also just happens to be Dr. Chris Dimitriades.
That's true. He does.
And is an absolute expert in all things cyber and digital. So we're thrilled to have him on the panel.
Excellent. It'll be interesting to see how that all comes together. A true hybrid, right? The virtual and the in person. So tell me a little bit about, do you have any other sessions that you're speaking on while you're here?
Yeah. So I'm doing another session on the questions you can ask, 10 questions you can ask to become a cloud and emerging technology champion.
Okay.
So if you think about it, we're all leaders and anyone can be a leader. emerging technology doesn't always come from a tops down kind of approach where, the CEO has a great idea and everybody's going to go implement it. A lot of times from people like us, experimenting with it, learning about it, saying, here's how we could do it. Here's how we could do it securely with the appropriate levels of privacy. The risk will not be too much if we do these things. And here's how we can actually put it in place. Well, to do that, you've got to know what questions to ask of the experts in those technologies so that you gear it the right way. And we'll be going over those questions, as well as resources that ISACA can provide so that you can learn more about emerging technologies and become a real expert and champion in those areas.
And when is that session?
So that is at, I think, 3:00 today. So it's after the panel.
You are a very busy man.
So today's going to be busy. Tomorrow I'll talk to Tim first thing in the morning, which will be fabulous. And then I get to party. That'll be fun.
Right. Okay.
And, and I can tell you, New Orleans is a great place to be. The jazz festival's going on, so
you're not missing anything by sitting.
You're not missing anything.
No, you're fine.
Yeah, just
you're good.
Just live stream some of the music. You'll get the hang of it.
Make yourself some gumbo. So, what is one of your favorite things about being involved with ISACA? You've obviously been involved a long time, and you keep coming back for more. So, what is it that drives this passion that you have?
Yeah, I've volunteered for a lot of organizations over the years, including other associations in this field. But one of the reasons I've kept volunteering for ISACA again and again are that we actually get things done. I think the reason we can get things done is, of course, we have great, passionate volunteers. And I've met many of them, many more to still meet, I'm sure. We do have 165,000 members, many of whom are volunteers. And that's the engine that makes ISACA go. But we also have a staff, and we have the resources. We have a great staff. You're one of them. Thank you, Megan. David's done a fine job as our CEO. And so one of the things I love as a volunteer is that I can give my ideas, I can give feedback, I can have an interview with somebody from ISACA, and they can capture that and talk to other volunteers and capture that. And then you have paid people who actually have deadlines that can turn it into something, and then you review it and give your input. And this process has worked very well for us over the years. And you can just see work product after work product that comes out. And the volunteers, people like me, feel really satisfied.
Right.
Stuff actually happens. I can't tell you how many hours I've spent volunteering for some other things. And we had some great discussions and dinners and even some trips. And not much really happened.
Yeah.
You have to put money into it to get something out. And ISACA has the wherewithal to make that happen. And we've proven it. We've been around for over 50 years, and we just continue to grow in relevancy and importance in our community.
So I'm going to plug for everybody. If you go to engage.isaca.org, you can click the volunteer link to find out more about how you can volunteer with ISACA. So, Rob, any closing comments for our fabulous audience at home? Or
You already know this because you're coming to this event and you're participating in it. But I think one of the most important things in life and for your career forever is to always be learning. Stay engaged, learn continuously, no matter how old you are. Stay curious, and you're going to keep learning about new things, and you'll see how it applies to your life. Might even make some changes in your career based on something you've learned. Never stop coming to events like this and looking for ways to learn about new things. Be challenged, have your thinking challenged. And I think that you'll find conferences like this really, really helpful. I hope you enjoy it.
Thank you so much, Rob. Thank you to all of you. We hope you have a wonderful rest of the conference, and we'll see you online again very soon.